I went to my best friend's wedding reception for the open bar and a free steak dinner. But what I got was front row seats to a Category 5 disaster. The MC was sweating bullets on stage, his smile frozen in a rictus of panic. Below, the guests were whispering, a low buzz of gossip that grew louder by the second. At the head table, the parents of the bride and groom looked like they'd seen a ghost. For the sake of two families I know my whole life, I did something stupid. Fueled by a healthy dose of whiskey and a surge of misplaced loyalty, I stood up and walked toward the stage. "You won't marry her?" I grabbed the microphone. "Fine. I will." I thought it was just an act, a crazy, desperate play to save face. It wasn't until later that night, staring at the bride, my new wife, looking like a goddess who had accidentally wandered in my mortal world, that the cold, hard reality hit me. I hadn't just saved the day. I had actually gotten myself married. It's a train wreck. A total train wreck. The groom, Leo Hayes, he bolted. What? Who'd he run off with? He's supposed to be marrying Scarlett Sterling today. Who else? Trevor Knight, the heir to Apex Corp. Rumor is Knight offered him a vice president position if he walked. I was at the bar, shooting the breeze with a few of the guys I grew up with, when the flood of whispers became a roar. Each word was a needle prick in my ear. My name is Ethan Vance. Today was supposed to be the happiest day of my best friend Leo's life. I set down my glass and scanned the room. We were in the Grand Storia's top-floor ballroom. Crystal chandeliers dripped from the ceiling like frozen fireworks, and 100 tables of the city's elite were packed into the space. It should have been the wedding of the year. Instead, it was a circus. The MC tapped the microphone, his voice trembling. "Ladies and gentlemen, please a little patience. Our groom, he seems to be stuck in some traffic. He'll be here any moment." Nobody was buying that line of crap. The jeers and gossip from the guests grew louder. The Sterlings are going to be a laughingstock, jilted at the altar. You can't buy that kind of humiliation. Seriously. And Scarlett Sterling, isn't she supposed to be the ice queen of New Haven City? All that beauty, and she still gets dumped for a job title. You gotta hand it to Leo, though. The guy's got balls of steel to cross the Sterlings for a shot at the big leagues. My eyes locked on the head table. Leo's parents were slumped in their chairs, their faces pale, lips trembling. They were speechless. On the other side, the bride's mother, Eleanor Sterling, was shaking with rage, her finger pointed at Leo's father. Her voice was a shrill dagger. "Is this how your family does things? You've dragged my daughter's name through the mud. If you don't give me an explanation today, I swear this isn't over." Scarlett's father, Robert Sterling, a man who radiated power even when seated, was stone-faced. His knuckles were white where he gripped the tablecloth, his jaw tight as he fought to contain his fury. And then there was Scarlett, the woman at the center of the storm, standing alone at the side of the stage in her pristine white wedding dress. She looked like a flawless ice sculpture, with skin as white as snow and features so perfect they didn't seem real. But her eyes, which should have been sparkling with joy, were as vacant and cold as a frozen lake. She just stood there, letting the tidal wave of pity, scorn, and morbid curiosity wash over her. Leo and I had been inseparable since kindergarten. His family was working class. Landing Scarlett Sterling, the most beautiful woman in the city and heiress to the Sterling Corporation, was like winning the Powerball. I thought he would have worshipped the ground she walked on. I never imagined that he would, for the promise of a corporate title, do something so inhuman. He could run. He could chase his ambition and burn every bridge behind him. But what about his parents? What about the Sterling family's reputation? And what about Scarlett, this innocent woman left to face the fallout alone? Crack! I slammed my whiskey glass down on the table, red wine sloshing over the sides. My buddy jumped. "Ethan, what the hell?" I didn't answer. A cocktail of whiskey and adrenaline was roaring through my veins straight to my head. Looking at that solitary figure on stage, at the despair on his parents' faces, a crazy idea started to form. This can't end like this. I pushed through the crowd, walking step by deliberate step toward the stage. Every eye in the room turned to me. "Who's that guy?" "I think he's Leo's friend. Some broke vet, just got out of the service. Doesn't even have a job. What's he going up there for? To apologize for his friend? Who does he think he is?" I ignored the noise. I walked straight onto the stage and took the microphone from the MC's limp, sweaty hand. The ballroom fell dead silent. I took a deep breath, my gaze sweeping across the crowd before finally landing on Scarlett's pale, beautiful face. Then, I lifted the microphone and yelled with everything I had. Leo Hayes won't marry her. My voice boomed through the hall, a sonic boom that rattled everyone's eardrums. So Ethan Vance will. A beat of silence. Then, the room exploded. Is he insane? Who is this guy? Does he have any idea what he's saying? Some nobody thinks he can marry a Sterling? A frog trying to eat a swan. Leo's parents stared at me, their jaws hanging open. Eleanor Sterling looked like she was about to faint from pure rage. She pointed a trembling finger at me. Who do you think you are? Get off that stage. Our family's reputation is not for the likes of you to tarnish further. But Scarlett, the ice in her eyes finally cracked. A flicker of disbelief. She looked at me like I was a lunatic who'd wandered in off the street. I ignored them all. My eyes were fixed on Robert Sterling, the only person here whose opinion mattered. My voice was low, but it cut through the chaos like a shard of ice. Mr. Sterling, you have two choices today. Option 1. This wedding becomes a funeral. The Sterling name gets dragged through the mud, and your family becomes the laughingstock of the entire city. Option 2. The wedding goes on. Whatever Leo promised your family, I'll deliver. The responsibilities he ran from, I'll carry. My name is Ethan Vance, and I'm making a promise right here, right now. As long as I'm breathing, I will never let Scarlett suffer a moment of humiliation. My words were a bomb that silenced the room once more. Everyone thought I was crazy. Hell, I thought I was crazy. But some things you have to do, even if they're insane. Some responsibilities, when they're dropped, someone has to pick them up. Robert Sterling's sharp eyes drilled into me, trying to see right through me. Time stretched on, each second an eternity. Just when I thought he was going to have security throw me out, he slowly closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they were filled with a weary resolve. He turned to his assistant and spoke, his voice raspy. Change the name on the certificate. The wedding, he declared, will continue. When the MC, sounding like he was in a trance, announced, the bride and groom will now exchange rings, my mind was still reeling. The heavy gold band in my palm felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I moved like a robot, lifting my hand. Under the gaze of 100 pairs of stunned eyes, Scarlett slowly raised her own trembling hand. Her fingertips were as cold as marble. As I slid the ring onto her delicate, perfect finger, I saw a single tear escape the corner of her eye. It traced a path down her cheek before disappearing into her lashes. My heart seized in my chest, a sharp pain that stole my breath. I knew that tear wasn't for me. The rest of the reception was a blur. Toasts, dinner, greeting guests. I was a puppet on a string, pulled along by Scarlett and our families. I drank glass after glass of wine. My throat burned, but my mind was terrifyingly clear. What have I done? Holy hell. I just married myself off. It wasn't until the last guest had departed and I was bundled into the back of a black Rolls-Royce, gliding silently toward the Sterling family's hilltop estate, that a sliver of reality began to sink in. The silence inside the car was suffocating. The driver and the bodyguard in the front seat stared straight ahead, as still as statues. In the back, Scarlett and I sat at opposite ends, a chasm of space between us. She'd changed out of her wedding gown and into a simple white dress. She stared out the window at the passing city lights, her perfect profile appearing and disappearing in the shifting shadows, radiating a cold, unapproachable aura. She hadn't said a single word to me, hadn't even looked at me. I opened my mouth, wanted to say something. Today was a mess, I'm sorry, or we can get this annulled as soon as the dust settles, but the words died in my throat. What was the point? In front of the entire city's elite, I, Ethan Vance, had become the Sterling's son-in-law. Real dignity isn't measured by the size of your wallet. It's measured by the strength of your spine. I'd chosen to stand up straight today, and now I had to bear the weight of that choice. The car passed through ornate iron gates into a brilliantly lit private estate, stopping before the main villa. A butler was already waiting, opening the door with a respectful bow. Welcome home, Miss Sterling, Mr. Vance. The name Mr. Vance made my foot slip, and I nearly stumbled. Scarlett acted as if she hadn't heard, gliding inside without a word. I braced myself and followed. The villa was ridiculously large, decorated in a style of understated luxury, where every single object probably cost more than my car. In the living room, Robert and Eleanor Sterling sat stiffly, their expressions grim. "Damn, Scarlett said, her tone flat. The moment Eleanor saw me, the rage she'd been suppressing all night erupted. She slammed her hand on the table and shot to her feet. "You have the nerve to call me Mom? Scarlett, you have utterly humiliated me." She pointed at me, her eyes like daggers. "And you? Were you? A broke veteran who thinks he can just climb his way into our family? Who gave you the audacity?" I frowned, but before I could speak, Scarlett's icy voice cut through the air. "Mother, he is the man you personally approved. He is the Sterling's son-in-law." Eleanor sputtered, her chest heaving. I was forced into it. "Look at him. Do his clothes even add up to $100? What can he give you? Is he worthy of you? That's enough." Eleanor fell silent, but she continued to glare at me with pure hatred. Robert turned to me, his expression complicated. "Ethan, I know what you did today was to save both our families from total humiliation. The Sterling family is in your debt for that." His tone shifted. "However, your marriage to Scarlett is not a game. From this day forward, you are a Sterling son-in-law. Your every word and action reflects on this family." He retrieved a folder from under the coffee table and pushed it toward me. "This is your post-nuptial agreement with Scarlett. Take a look. To put it simply, your marriage will last for 1 year. Within this year, you are legally husband and wife, but in name only." I picked up the document and scanned it. There were a lot of clauses, but it boiled down to a few key points. Publicly, we were to act like a loving couple to protect the Sterling family's image. During the marriage, neither party was to interfere in the other's private life. As the one marrying in, I would receive a monthly allowance of $10,000, but was forbidden from any involvement in the Sterling Corporation. After 1 year, we would divorce amicably. The Sterling family would compensate me with $10 million cash and a condo downtown. This wasn't a prenup. It was a glorified employment contract. They were buying my time and my dignity for 1 year. Eleanor sneered from the side. $10 million. That's more than your kind will make in a lifetime. Sign it. Don't push your luck." I put the document down. I didn't look at her. I looked straight into Robert Sterling's eyes. "Mr. Sterling, I didn't step up today for money." I paused, then picked up the pen and, without a moment's hesitation, signed my name at the bottom. Then I pushed the agreement back across the table. "The money, the condo, I don't want any of it. After 1 year, I'll walk away with nothing. I only have one condition." My gaze shifted to Scarlett, who had been watching the entire exchange like a spectator. "For this 1 year, I hope we can treat each other with respect. Like friends." With that, I stood up. "It's getting late. I should head home." "Home?" Eleanor shrieked. "Home to where? You're the Sterling's son-in-law now. Are you expecting the daughter of this family to live with you in that shoebox apartment of yours? Think of the scandal." Scarlett finally looked up at me, her cool eyes unreadable. "You'll stay here. The butler has already prepared your room." She turned and walked up the grand staircase, leaving me with nothing but her proud, distant back. I stood in the center of the opulent, ice-cold living room and suddenly felt like an imposter, a joke who had stumbled into a world where he didn't belong. This was my wedding night. No celebración, no pasión. Just a cold contract and a wife who looked at me like I was thin air. The butler showed me to a guest room on the second floor. It was huge, bigger than my entire apartment, with its own bathroom and walk-in closet, all decked out in lavish furnishings. But it felt empty. It was missing a human touch. I took a shower, changed into the pajamas the butler had laid out, and climbed into the massive soft bed. But I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned, my mind a chaotic slideshow of the day's events. Leo's betrayal, Scarlett's tear, the guest's ridicule, Eleanor's venom. I sighed and picked up my phone from the nightstand. Dozens of missed calls, all from my childhood friends. My WhatsApp was blowing up. A group chat named The Last Bachelors had over 999 unread messages. "Ethan, you legend. Rage for the beauty. Dude, did you really marry Scarlett Sterling? When can we buy you a drink and meet the new missus? Vance, Leo is a son of a bitch. I'm gonna go smash his windows tomorrow." I managed a bitter smile and typed back, "Don't do anything stupid. Everyone get some sleep." I turned off the phone and rubbed my throbbing temples. In the span of a few hours, I'd gone from a regular veteran to the live-in son-in-law of the wealthiest family in the city. It was a bigger rush than any firefight I'd ever been in. The night passed in silence. The next morning, my internal clock woke me up on the dot. A habit from the service I couldn't shake. I got dressed, putting on the same cheap jeans and t-shirt I'd worn yesterday, and went downstairs. In the enormous dining room, a long table was laden with a breakfast spread fit for royalty, a mix of everything you could possibly imagine. Robert Sterling sat at the head of the table, reading the Wall Street Journal. Eleanor was sipping a green smoothie. Scarlett was staring at a tablet, displaying a dizzying array of stock market data, a cup of black coffee in her hand. The three of them ate in a strange, oppressive silence. My arrival shattered it. Eleanor looked up, her gaze raking over me like I was something she'd scraped off her shoe. "Oomph, acting like you own the place already," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Who gave you permission to come down here? Don't you know this family has standards?" I stopped in my tracks. Robert lowered his paper, frowning. "Eleanor, that's enough. Enough." Her voice shot up an octave. "Robert, look at what he's wearing. It's from a discount store. People will think we hired a garbage collector. How do you expect me to eat with him sitting at our table?" She put down her spoon, dabbed her lips with a napkin, and fixed me with a look of utter disgust. "Ethan, is it? Let me ask you, how much do you make a month?" "Here we go. I just got out of the service," I said calmly. "I haven't found a full-time job yet. I'm delivering for DoorDash right now. It brings in about $5,000 or $6,000 a month." $5,000 or $6,000. Eleanor burst out laughing as if I'd told the funniest joke in the world. "Haha, 5,000. Do you have any idea how much this smoothie costs? Your entire month's salary wouldn't even cover my breakfast." Her smile vanished, replaced by an icy, cruel glare. "I don't care what kind of insane stunt you pulled yesterday, or what Robert thinks. Now that you're in my house, you'll follow my rules." She pointed to a small, isolated corner of the room. "From now on, you'll eat over there, with the staff." This wasn't just an insult. It was a direct assault on my dignity. My fists clenched at my sides. After leaving the army, all I wanted was a quiet life. But that didn't mean I'd let someone walk all over me. Just as I was about to respond, Scarlett, who had been silent the entire time, spoke up. "Mother." Her voice was still cold, but held a new, unyielding edge. "He's my husband." Eleanor froze. Scarlett put down her coffee cup and looked up, her icy gaze meeting her mother's. "I don't care what any of us think of him privately, but in public and in this house, he is Scarlett Sterling's husband. In name, he is the son-in-law of this family. If we don't even respect him, how do you expect anyone else to look at the Sterlings?" She paused, her voice growing colder. "Today you make him eat with the staff. What's the headline tomorrow? Scarlett Sterling's husband starving, fights butler for scraps." You. Eleanor was so choked with anger she couldn't speak, her face turning shades of red and white. Scarlett ignored her and turned to me. She uttered a single word. "Seat." I met her gaze for a second before sitting down in the chair opposite her. The butler immediately appeared and set a place for me. Eleanor was shaking with rage. She threw her spoon into her bowl with a loud clatter. "Fine, fine. Scarlett, you've really grown wings, haven't you? Defying your own mother for an outsider." She shot to her feet and pointed at my face. "You just wait. 1 year. After 1 year, I want to see you and your pathetic $5,000 salary get thrown out of this house like a dog." She stormed upstairs. The three of us were left in the vast, silent dining room. The atmosphere was painfully awkward. Robert Sterling sighed. "Ethan, don't take it to heart. Your aunt. That's just her way." I gave a tight smile and said nothing. Did I take it to heart? Yes, but not because of Eleanor's insults. It was because of what Scarlett had said. She wasn't defending me. She was defending herself. She was defending the Sterling family's image. In her eyes, Ethan Vance was probably just a tool, a useful one for now, a living, breathing shield for her family's shame. The rest of breakfast tasted like cardboard. After we finished, Scarlett picked up a set of car keys. "I'll drive you to work." I was taken aback. "You don't have to. I could take the bus." I said, "I'll drive you." Her tone left no room for argument. "For the next year, I'm responsible for your transportation. I don't want to see a headline tomorrow that reads, 'Sterling Corporation heiress's husband squeezes on a public bus.'" What could I say to that? I followed her out of the villa. A red Ferrari was parked by the curb, its sleek body gleaming in the morning sun. Scarlett slipped into the driver's seat, and I got in beside her. The engine roared to life, and we sped away from the estate. Watching the opulent mansions recede in the rearview mirror, I felt a strange mix of emotions. So this was the world of the rich. A world where even marriage and dignity had a price tag, bound by contracts and rules. Scarlett dropped me off at the entrance to my rundown apartment complex. "Get out," she said curtly. "My scooter is still upstairs," I explained. She didn't speak, just looked at me. Her expression clearly said, "Do you really think I'm going to wait for you in a place like this?" I got the message and unbuckled my seatbelt. I'll go get it. You can take off. Be here at 8 tonight. I'll pick you up," she said. Before I could reply, she hit the gas, and the red Ferrari vanished around the corner. I shook my head and walked into the shabby building. Back in my tiny, 300-square-foot apartment, surrounded by my familiar, worn-out furniture, I finally felt like I could breathe again. It was small and old, but it felt alive. It wasn't a cold, gilded cage like the Sterling estate. I changed into my DoorDash uniform, grabbed my electric scooter, and started my day. Ding. "You have a new order, ding. The customer is waiting. Please deliver as soon as possible." My phone buzzed nonstop as I weaved through the streets and alleys of New Haven City. Sweat soaked through the back of my shirt, but for the first time in 24 hours, I felt grounded. At the end of the day, a man has to stand on his own 2 feet. As dusk fell, I had just completed my last delivery when an unknown number called me. I answered. A voice I never wanted to hear again came through the speaker. "Ethan, it's me." "Thou." My hand tightened around the phone. His voice was slick with a false, wheedling charm. "Bro, about yesterday. Yesterday was my bad. Where are you? Let me buy you dinner. Apologize properly." Apologize? My knuckles turned white. If sorry was enough, what were fists for? A cold smirk touched my lips. "Dinner's not necessary. I'm afraid I'd end up smashing the plate over your pathetic face." "Come on, man. Don't be like that." Leo sounded desperate. "I know you're pissed, but just let me explain. I had my reasons. It was Trevor Knight from Apex Corp. He personally headhunted me. I did it for my future." Trevor Knight? The name rang a bell. New Haven's most notorious trust fund brat. A guy who acted like he owned the world because his father did. "So for your future, you left your parents, the Sterlings, and Scarlett. You left them all at the altar to be humiliated." My voice was ice. I didn't have a choice." His tone shifted, becoming self-righteous. "Ethan, you were just a grunt. You don't get it. This is how the world works. You have to climb. The Sterlings look impressive, but they're old news compared to Apex Corp. I'm Trevor's right-hand man now, a vice president at Apex." His voice was dripping with smug satisfaction. "I'm calling to give you a chance. Divorce Scarlett and give her back to me. For old time's sake, I can even get Trevor to give you a job as a security guard. How about it? $100,000 a year. Better than delivering takeout, right?" His shamelessness was so profound, it was almost comical. This world was truly absurd. The betrayer felt no remorse. Instead, he saw himself as a king, magnanimously offering scraps to a peasant. "Leo," I said, my voice dangerously low, "listen carefully. First, Scarlett is my wife now. She has nothing to do with you. Second, wipe that disgusting smirk off your face and don't ever call me again. And third," my voice dropped to a deadly whisper, "if I ever hear you speak about her like that again, I will personally tear your tongue out." I hung up, staring at my phone's dark screen. A cold resolve settled in my gut. I wasn't going to let this go. I wouldn't let a snake like that slither away and thrive. At 8 o'clock sharp, I was waiting outside my apartment complex. The flashy red Ferrari pulled up right on time. After I got in, Scarlett didn't start the car. She handed me a sleek, designer shopping bag. "Change." I opened it. Inside was a perfectly tailored Armani suit, complete with a shirt, leather shoes, and a tie. "What's this for?" I asked. "There's a charity auction tonight. You're coming with me," she said, starting the engine. Again with the orders. I was annoyed, but I changed in the back seat anyway. When I sat back down in the passenger seat, Scarlett glanced over at me. A flicker of surprise, quickly hidden, crossed her icy features. My frame was forged on the front lines, a classic V-shape that made any clothes look good. This expensive suit, however, amplified the quiet intensity one carried. making me look sharp and dangerous. "It's acceptable," she said flatly, turning her attention back to the road. The auction was held at an exclusive private club. The guest list was a who's who of New Haven City. As I walked into the glittering hall with Scarlett on my arm, we immediately became the center of attention. The men's eyes were glued to Scarlett, filled with awe and desire. The women's eyes were on me, filled with curiosity and condescension. "So that's the Sterling's new live-in son-in-law. He cleans up well, I'll give him that. What good is a pretty face if he's just a freeloader? I heard he was a DoorDash driver. Such a waste. Scarlett Sterling is a prize, and she's ended up with a nobody." I ignored the whispers. Scarlett seemed used to it, her expression unreadable as she led me toward our seats in the front row. Just as we were about to sit, a slick voice called out from nearby. Well, if it isn't Scarlett. Moving on so quickly? Already showing off your new boy toy." I turned. A young man in a gaudy designer suit, his hair slicked back with too much product, was smirking at us. He had his arm around a woman in a tight dress. His face screamed arrogant jerk. And standing behind him, bowing and scraping with a pathetic smile, was Leo. When Leo saw me, his face went from shock to a mask of bitter contempt. He leaned in and whispered something in the rich kid's ear. The young man, Trevor Knight, looked me up and down, his eyes filled with disdain. He let go of the woman and swaggered over to Scarlett, holding out his hand. "Scarlett, I told you a loser like Leo wasn't good enough for you. See, I took care of him for you. Now it's time for you to be with a real man." Scarlett didn't even glance at his outstretched hand. She uttered a single cold word. "Get lost." Trevor's face darkened. He retracted his hand, his smile turning sinister. "Scarlett, don't be ungrateful. You think you're still the untouchable princess of the Sterling family? Let me tell you something. With one phone call, I can make your company's stock plummet tomorrow." He pointed a finger at me. "You'd rather have this delivery boy loser than me? Are you blind? Whether he's a loser or not is none of your business." Scarlett's voice was like steel. "And Trevor, you should really learn to control your dog. Letting him bark in public is just embarrassing for you." Her eyes flickered meaningfully toward Leo. Leo's face turned beet red. "You bitch." Trevor was enraged. He raised his hand, aiming to slap Scarlett across the face. His hand moved fast, cutting through the air. The crowd gasped, but no one moved to intervene. Scarlett's face paled, and she instinctively shut her eyes. But the slap never landed. A hand, strong as an iron clamp, caught Trevor's wrist in midair. "My hand. You dare touch my wife." I stared at Trevor, my voice low and laced with a chilling menace that seemed to drop the temperature in the room. My grip tightened, and Trevor's face contorted in pain. "Who the hell are you? Let go." "Do you know who I am?" he snarled, struggling against my hold. "I don't care who you are." I applied a little more pressure. Crack! A sharp, sickening snap echoed in the sudden silence. "Ahawk!" Trevor let out a scream like a slaughtered pig, his face twisting in agony as a waterfall of cold sweat poured down his forehead. His two bodyguards saw what happened and charged at me, roaring. They were big-eyes professionals by the look of them. The guests scrambled backward, not wanting to get caught in the crossfire. Scarlett grabbed the sleeve of my jacket, her eyes wide with alarm. I didn't even look back. I just spoke one cold word. Pathetic. As the first bodyguard reached me, I moved, a blur of motion. I delivered a single, lightning-fast kick to his chest. The man's 250-pound body flew backward like a rag doll, crashing into a champagne tower. The sound of shattering glass mingled with his scream. The second bodyguard lunged, his fist raised. Before he could even throw the punch, I dropped into a classic shoulder throw, slamming him onto the marble floor. Thud! The impact shook the ground. The bodyguard convulsed once, foam bubbling at his lips, and then passed out. The entire thing took less than 3 seconds. Fast, precise, brutal. The hall was dead silent. Everyone stared at me as if I were a monster. This was the freeloader they'd been whispering about. His skills were more terrifying than a special forces operative. Scarlett was stunned. She looked up at my broad back, and for the first time, her icy eyes held an emotion other than shock. Leo was so terrified he collapsed onto the floor, a dark stain spreading across the front of his pants. He looked at me with a primal fear, as if seeing me for the first time. He'd known I was a veteran, but he never knew I could do that. I released Trevor's wrist, letting him drop to the floor like a piece of garbage. Consider this a warning. I looked down at him, my eyes as cold as a grave. Next time, it won't be your wrist. It'll be your neck. Then, without another glance, I took Scarlett's hand, she was still in a daze, and led her to our seats through a sea of awestruck faces. The auction resumed, but no one was paying attention to the items on stage. They kept stealing glances at me, their eyes filled with a new mixture of fear, curiosity, and respect. Trevor, supported by a terrified Leo, scrambled out of the hall. As he left, he shot me a look of pure hatred that promised revenge. I wasn't concerned. A bully who only knew how to throw his weight around was less than an ant to me. Scarlett sat beside me, silent. I could see she wanted to ask something, but she kept it to herself. The way she looked at me had changed, though. I was no longer just a tool. I was a puzzle she couldn't solve. Halfway through the auction, the final item was brought to the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, our final piece tonight is an extremely rare, century-old wild ginseng root, harvested from the Appalachian Mountains. Its medicinal value is off the charts. The bidding will start at $500,000. My eyes narrowed. Robert Sterling, my new father-in-law, had a chronic heart condition from years of overwork. This root could be a literal lifesaver for him. Scarlett clearly had the same thought. She immediately raised her paddle. 600,000, 700,000. A portly businessman across the room countered. 800,000. The price climbed steadily, quickly reaching $2 million. This was far beyond the root's actual market value. Scarlett's brow furrowed. The price was getting steep, even for her. Just as she was hesitating, a familiar voice cut through the room. 5 million. It was Trevor Knight. He was back, his arm in a makeshift sling, but the arrogance and venom in his eyes were burning brighter than ever. He looked smugly at us, or more specifically, at Scarlett. Scarlett, I know your father isn't well. Consider this root a gift to my future father-in-law. All you have to do is come over here right now and give me a kiss, and it's all yours. Leo, standing behind him, chimed in. You hear that? What mister? Knight says goes. Scarlett, what are you waiting for? Get over there. Shameless. Vile. The crowd murmured in disgust. Scarlett was trembling with fury, her face flushed. In your dreams, Trevor. Is that so? Trevor's smile was chilling. Then don't blame me. I'm taking this root home tonight. Let's see who dares to bid against me. He scanned the room, his eyes full of threats. The few people who had been considering bidding slowly lowered their paddles. No one wanted to cross the air of Apex Corp over an auction item. The auctioneer looked helpless. Scarlett's nails dug into her palms, her eyes blazing with impotent rage. Just when everyone assumed the ginseng was Trevor's, a calm, clear voice echoed through the hall. 10 million. The entire room went silent. Everyone, including a stunned Trevor and Scarlett, whipped their heads around to see who had spoken. It was me. I slowly lowered my bidding paddle. T10 million. The auctioneer's hand, holding the gavel, was shaking. Sir, are you sure you're bidding $10 million? People were looking at me like I was insane. Jumping from 5 million to 10 million. This wasn't bidding. This was burning money for sport. Trevor's face turned an ugly shade of green. He stared at me, practically spitting fire. Are you out of your damn mind? You're a delivery boy. Where are you going to get $10 million? This is malicious bidding. You're disrupting the auction. Leo screeched. That's right. He's a broke loser. He doesn't have the money. Security. Get security in here and arrest him. Scarlett tugged at my sleeve, her voice a frantic whisper. Ethan, are you crazy? Put the paddle down. This isn't a joke. She thought I was just being proud, trying to one-up Trevor with money I didn't have. I ignored them all and looked calmly at the auctioneer. What's the matter? Worried I can't pay. I reached into my pocket, pulled out a simple black card, and tossed it to a nearby staff member. Run it. The card was matte black, made of some kind of metal, with no bank logo or numbers. The only marking was a single, stylized silver letter, H etched in the corner. The staff member took the card, his face a mask of disbelief, and hurried to a card reader in the back. Trevor crossed his arms, a sneer on his face. Go on, keep up the act. I can't wait to see how this ends. If you can actually produce $10 million, I, Trevor Knight, will get on my knees and call you daddy. Everyone in the room craned their necks, waiting for my public humiliation. A minute later, the staff member returned. He walked as if he were treading on clouds, his legs shaking. He approached me, his eyes wide with an almost religious awe, and held the black card out with 2 trembling hands. "Sir, your card." The payment was successful. What? The smirk on Trevor's face froze. Jaws dropped all across the ballroom. "Impossible." Trevor screamed. "Absolutely impossible. How could a delivery boy have $10 million? He stormed over to the payment station, snatched the receipt from a machine, and stared at the long line of zeros. His face went slack with shock. It was real. The payment had gone through. This. Trevor pointed at me, sputtering, unable to form a complete sentence. I, however, had already taken the ornate wooden box containing the ginseng root from the staff member. I walked over to Scarlett and handed it to her. "A gift for Dad." Scarlett just stared at me, then at the box in her hands, completely frozen. Her brain had short-circuited. $10 million. He actually had $10 million. Who was he? How could a DoorDash driver possibly have that kind of money? How many other secrets was he hiding? I didn't explain. I just placed the box in her arms, then turned to face the ash-faced Trevor. A slow, dangerous smile spread across my face. "Mr. Knight, what was it you were saying a minute ago?" Trevor's face flushed a deep, mottled purple as he remembered his promise. Get on his knees and call me Daddy. Him, the Prince of Apex Corp, kneeling to a man he considered trash. He would rather die. I was just kidding," he stammered. "Were you?" I took a slow step toward him. Because I wasn't. My eyes went cold. An invisible, crushing pressure radiated from me, enveloping him. Trevor felt a chill shoot up his spine. His legs gave out, and with a pathetic whimper, he collapsed to the floor. He actually knelt. The entire ballroom gasped. "Didadi." The word was a choked, terrified whisper, forced from his lips by pure, unadulterated fear. "Good boy," I said, nodding with satisfaction. I patted his cheek. "Next time you run your mouth, try to engage your brain first." Without another look at the broken fool, I took Scarlett, who was still in shock, by the hand and led her out of the auction hall, leaving a crowd of terrified, speechless socialites in our wake. It was late when we got back to the Sterling estate. Robert and Eleanor were still up, waiting for us in the living room. When Scarlett placed the wooden box on the table and said the words $10 million, Eleanor's eyes nearly popped out of her head. $10 million? For this piece of old wood. She snatched the box, flipped it open, and shrieked. "Scarlett, have you lost your mind? Spending $10 million on a rotten root? Do you think our money grows on trees?" Robert's brow was also deeply furrowed. He was clearly not happy about the price. "Scarlett, that was reckless." Scarlett opened her mouth, wanting to explain that Ethan had paid for it, but she didn't know how. How could she say that the son-in-law her family despised had just casually dropped $10 million? Who would even believe her? That's when I spoke up. "It's not a rotten root. It's a lifesaver." Eleanor immediately turned her fire on me. "You shut up. Who do you think you are? You have no right to speak here. A freeloader, spending our family's money, and you have the nerve to talk back." I ignored her and looked directly at Robert. "Mr. Sterling, have you been experiencing chest tightness and shortness of breath recently? Especially after midnight, a sharp, needle-like pain in your heart?" Robert Sterling's expression changed instantly. He stared at me in shock. How did you know that?" It was his chronic ailment. He'd seen countless specialists, but they could only manage the symptoms, not cure the underlying problem. To prevent panic in the company, only he and a few trusted confidants knew the full extent of it. Not even Eleanor or Scarlett knew the details. "I know a thing or two about medicine," I answered calmly. "Don't be ridiculous." Eleanor scoffed. "You read a few articles online, and now you think you're a doctor?" I didn't waste my breath on her. I opened the box, took out the ginseng root, broke off a tiny fibrous piece, and held it out to Robert. "Mr. Sterling, trust me just this once. Hold this under your tongue. Within an hour, your symptoms will improve dramatically." Robert looked at me, his eyes full of doubt. Scarlett stepped in. "Dad, don't eat that. Let's wait for the family doctor to get here." I smiled. "By the time a doctor gets here, it might be too late. Mr. Sterling, the blood clot in your system could block an artery at any moment. Tonight is a critical point. If you make it through, you'll be fine. If you don't, I didn't need to finish. The implication was clear. The color drained from Robert's face. He stared at me, then at the piece of root in my hand. Finally, with a grimace, he took it and placed it in his mouth. A faint, earthy fragrance and a slightly bitter taste filled his mouth. Eleanor was pacing anxiously. Robert, you're crazy. You just going to eat what he gives you? What if it's poison? The minutes ticked by. After about half an hour, Robert's pale complexion began to regain its color. A healthy, rosy flush spread across his cheeks. He let out a long, deep breath, his face breaking into a look of utter disbelief and joy. The tightness. It's gone. The pain in my chest is gone. I feel warm all over. I feel incredible. He stood up, stretched his arms and legs, and felt a lightness he hadn't experienced in years. Eleanor and Scarlett were speechless. It actually worked? Could it be that this loser actually knew medicine? The way Robert Sterling looked at me changed completely. The initial resignation and scrutiny were replaced by shock, curiosity, and even a hint of awe. Ethan, who are you? I just smiled faintly. Just a veteran who knows a little bit about first aid and herbal remedies. That explanation clearly didn't satisfy him. A little first aid could take down 2 professional bodyguards in 3 seconds. A little herbalism could diagnose his secret illness at a glance and practically cure it with a tiny piece of a root and that mysterious black car that could handle a $10 million charge without blinking. This young man was wrapped in layers of mystery, impossible to see through. But Robert Sterling was a shrewd man. He knew what to ask and what not to. He gave me a long, deep look and said, with sincere gravity, Ethan, thank you. For today, the Sterling family is once again in your debt. It was the second time he'd said it, but the weight and tone of his words this time were worlds apart from what he'd said at the wedding. Eleanor stood by, her face a mixture of red and white, too embarrassed to speak. The proof was right in front of her. Her gaze, though still tinged with disdain, now held a new emotion, fear. Scarlett's expression was even more complex. She looked at me as if she were seeing me for the first time. This man, dressed in cheap, casual clothes, carried himself with an aura of complete control. Just how many secrets was he hiding? The night passed without another word. The next morning, I changed back into my DoorDash uniform, ready to head out for my shift. As I reached the door, Scarlett called out to me. Wait! She held out a bank card. This has $10 million in it. You shouldn't have to pay for the ginseng root. I looked at the card, then at her. I didn't take it. I told you it was a gift for Dad. That's not the point, she insisted. Our agreement is very clear. I don't want any financial entanglements between us outside of the contract. Always back to the contract. This woman and her damn rules. A flicker of irritation went through me, but I knew her personality. I took the card from her hand. Fine, I'll take the money. But not now. When we get divorced in a year, you can give me this card along with the rest of your settlement. I pushed the card back in her hand. Scarlett was completely thrown by that move. I didn't give her a chance to argue. I got on my electric scooter and rode off. Watching my retreating back, Scarlett clutched the bank card, and a smile she wasn't even aware of touched her lips. This man was always full of surprises. I hadn't gotten far from the Sterling estate when, at a secluded bend in the road, several black vans screeched to a halt, boxing me in from the front and back. The doors slid open and 20 men armed with steel pipes and machetes jumped out, surrounding me. Leading them was Trevor Knight, a fresh cast on his arm. Beside him, smirking with malice, was Leo. Ethan, we meet again, Trevor sneered, a cigarette dangling from his lips. You were pretty tough yesterday, weren't you? Let's see who's tougher today. You, or the blades of my 20 brothers. Leo chimed in. You're dead, you loser. You messed with Mr. Knight, and now you're going to pay. Get on your knees and beg. Maybe he'll leave your body in one piece. I sat on my scooter, my expression blank as I looked at them. Trevor, I believe I warned you yesterday. Warn me. Trevor laughed hysterically. Who the hell are you to warn me? Let me tell you something. In New Haven City, what I say goes. If I want someone dead, they don't live to see the sunrise. He dropped his cigarette, grinding it out with his heel. His eyes turned savage. Get him. Break his arms and legs. I'll take care of any consequences. At his command, the 20 thugs charged, screaming, their weapons raised. The air crackled with violence. I sighed and dismounted my scooter. I didn't want trouble. After I left the service, all I wanted was to live a quiet, normal life. But there are always flies that insist on buzzing in your face. And if they won't go away, you have no choice but to swat them. I once defended this country's borders. My hands have been stained with the blood of our enemies. On the international blacklists, they gave me a name, Hades. And when Hades gets angry, people die. The instant the first thug's steel pipe began its descent toward my head, I moved. My body blurred, vanishing from where I stood. A split second later, I was behind him. My elbow struck the back of his neck with lightning speed. Crack! The man collapsed without a sound. Then, I moved through them like a wolf in a sheep pen. It wasn't a fight, it was a slaughter. I didn't use any fancy moves. Just the simple, direct, and lethal techniques they teach you when survival is the only goal. Every strike was met with the sound of breaking bones and agonized screams. Elbow strikes, knee jabs, chokeholds, joint locks. Less than a minute later, it was over. The ground was littered with bodies. 20 men, writhing and groaning on the pavement. Not a single one was standing. The alley reeked of blood. Trevor and Leo were frozen, their faces masks of pure terror. They stared at the man standing in the middle of the carnage, without a single drop of blood on him, and felt a chill so deep it froze their souls. It was like watching a demon crawl out of hell. A monster. Leo's teeth chattered, and his pants were wet again. I walked toward them, one slow step at a time. In the quiet alley, my footsteps sounded like the drumbeat of death, each one hammering against their hearts. "D, don't come any closer." Trevor scrambled backward, falling on his ass and trying to crab walk away in a panic. "Scared now?" I stood over him, my eyes devoid of any emotion. "It's too late." I raised my foot and, without hesitation, stomped down on his right leg. Crunch. Ah! Trevor's scream was inhuman, a sound of pure agony that tore through the morning air. His right leg was bent at a sickening, unnatural angle, the white of his bone piercing through his pants. My leg, he shrieked, clutching it as he writhed on the ground. I ignored him and turned to the pale, trembling Leo. Leo dropped to his knees with a thud and started banging his head on the pavement, begging for his life. Ethan, I was wrong. I'm not human. I'm an animal. Please, for the sake of our friendship, everything we grew up with, please let me go. I'll never do it again." Tears and snot streamed down his face. For the sake of our friendship, I almost laughed. Where was that friendship when Eleanor was humiliating me? Where was it when Trevor was threatening Scarlett? When he abandoned his own parents and his fiancée for a promotion? Did he think about our friendship then? Some things, once broken, can never be put back together. You can be poor, but you can't be without a conscience. A man without a conscience isn't a man at all. I walked over and crouched down in front of him, patting his terrified face. "You know, Leo," I said softly, "there's nothing in this world I hate more than a traitor." My eyes went cold. In a single, fluid motion, I grabbed both of his arms and twisted them outwards. Crack, crack, 2 sharp snaps, followed by a scream that barely sounded human. His arms hung limp and useless at his sides. I had destroyed his hands. From this day on, the man who would do anything for his future would never be able to grasp anything again. I stood up, got on my scooter, and rode away without a backward glance, as if I had just crushed 2 insignificant insects. When I got back to the Sterling estate, the faint smell of blood still clung to me. I tried to hide it, but Scarlett's sharp senses picked it up immediately. She was in a living room on a business call. When she saw me, she ended the call and walked over, her perfect brow furrowed. "Did you get into a fight?" "No," I lied without blinking. "Crashed into a butcher's stall on a delivery." The excuse was so bad, I almost laughed at myself. Scarlett clearly didn't believe me. She circled me like a wary cat. "You'd better not cause any trouble for me," she warned. "Don't forget who you are now. You represent the Sterling family. Always the family's image." I was tired of it. I walked past her and headed upstairs. "Where are you going?" "To take a shower. I smell like a butcher shop. Wouldn't want to offend the great Miss Sterling," I said without looking back. Behind me, Scarlett stared at my back and stamped her foot in frustration. This man was getting more and more out of control. When I came back downstairs, showered and changed, Scarlett was gone. The butler informed me she had left for the office. Fine by me. It saved us from another awkward encounter. I was about to go back to my room when Robert Sterling called out to me. He invited me into his study. "A10, seat." His tone was even more respectful than the day before. He poured me a glass of what looked like very expensive single malt scotch. "Try this. Top shelf." I took a sip. "Good stuff." "Ethan," Robert said, getting straight to the point. "I know you're not an ordinary person. I want to ask about your past. I just want to talk to you about Scarlett." I set down my glass and listened. That girl, she's been tough her whole life. Her mother was very strict with her, showed her almost no affection. Her only goal was to mold her into the perfect heiress. Because of that, Scarlett uses coldness as armor. But deep down, she wants warmth more than anyone. Robert sighed, his eyes filled with a father's love and regret. Leo's betrayal hit her hard. She doesn't talk about it, but I know she's hurting. What you did at the wedding, while reckless, truly saved her and our family. I hope, over this next year, you can be good to her. I'm not asking you to fall in love with her, but at least as a friend, could you just look out for her? He took a check from his desk drawer and pushed it toward me. I know you're not in this for the money, but please accept this as a small token of a father's gratitude. The pin is Scarlett's birthday. I glanced at the check. The number had a lot of zeros. $100 million. He wasn't playing around. I pushed the check back. "Mr. Sterling, I told you, I don't want your money, but I will promise you this. For this 1 year, I will do everything in my power to protect her and make sure no one ever hurts her again." It was a promise, not just to Robert Sterling, but to myself. Since I had taken a groom's place, I would play the part of a husband to the very end. Leaving the study, my thoughts were tangled. I was starting to feel sorry for Scarlett, a princess raised in a gilded cage, who seemed to have everything, but was starved of the one thing that mattered most: love. That night, Scarlett came home very late. She looked exhausted, her beautiful face etched with fatigue. She seemed surprised to find me waiting for her in the living room. "You're still up." "Waiting for you," I said simply. She paused, then her cold mask slipped back into place. "Why? I don't need anyone to wait for me." "Have you eaten?" I asked. "Not hungry." I stood up and went into the kitchen. A few minutes later, I came out with a steaming bowl of tomato soup and a perfectly grilled cheese sandwich and placed it in front of her. "Eat. You've had a long day." The golden, toasted bread, the rich red of the soup, and the comforting aroma filled the air. It was the meal I used to make for myself on long nights back at the base. Scarlett stared at the simple, unpretentious meal, stunned. In her entire life, no one besides a paid chef had ever cooked a meal for her. A strange emotion welled up inside her, a mix of sour and sweet, with a gentle, spreading warmth. Her eyes started to get misty. "What are you staring at?" Worried I poisoned it. I teased. She snapped out of it and shot me a glare, but she picked up the spoon and took a small, hesitant bite. She ate slowly, gracefully, as if savoring a gourmet dish. She finished the entire bowl, even using the sandwich to wipe up the last drops of soup. "Thank you," she said softly, setting the bowl down. "Don't mention it." In that moment, the atmosphere between us shifted. The wall of ice that had stood between us seemed to have thawed, just a little. Just then, Scarlett's phone rang. She answered it, and after listening for a few seconds, her face changed dramatically. "What?" "Trevor Knight sent people to shut down our construction site, and they injured our workers." She shot to her feet, her voice sharp with anger and worry. "Okay, I understand. I'm on my way." She hung up, grabbed her car keys, and started for the door. I grabbed her arm. "I'm coming with you." "No." She tried to pull away. "This is company business. Stay out of it. You think you can solve this alone?" I looked her in the eyes, my gaze steady and unyielding. "Or are you planning to let Trevor humiliate you again, just like at the auction?" Scarlett froze. I let go of her arm. "Let's go," I said calmly. "Your problem is my problem." She looked at me, her lips parted as if to argue, but in the end, she said nothing. She just nodded, accepting my presence. When we arrived at the construction site on the outskirts of the city, the place was in chaos. Dozens of thugs armed with bats and pipes were blocking the main gate, preventing anyone from entering or leaving. Several foremen were lying on the ground, beaten and bloody, and Trevor Knight was sitting in a large armchair, his cast-bound leg propped up, a cigar in his mouth, looking over the scene with arrogant satisfaction. When he saw Scarlett's car, he broke into a nasty grin. "Scarlett, you finally made it. I was starting to think you were going to hide." He gestured to the construction site behind him. "I've decided I want this project. Be smart and hand over the contract. Otherwise, I'll make sure the Sterling Corporation never has another peaceful day." Scarlett was shaking with rage. "You're despicable, Trevor. Despicable?" He roared with laughter. "Business is war. All's fair. Here's the deal. Either you give me the land, or you spend the night with me. Your choice." His crude words sent his thugs into a chorus of jeering laughter. The color drained from Scarlett's face. Just then, I stepped out of the car. When Trevor saw me, his smile vanished, replaced by a look of pure, undiluted terror and hatred. It's you," he stammered, pointing a trembling finger at me. "WH, what are you doing here?" I ignored him and walked over to the injured workers, crouching down to check their injuries. Thankfully, nothing was life-threatening. I stood up, my gaze sweeping over the jeering thugs before finally landing on Trevor's face. "Yesterday, I believe I broke your right leg." My voice was quiet, but it sent a chill down Trevor's spine. "Are you hoping I break your left one today, too?" My words were like a bucket of ice water, extinguishing his fiery arrogance. His face twitched uncontrollably as the memory of yesterday's agonizing pain flooded back. The thugs behind him instinctively took a step back. My reputation preceded me. The story of one man taking down 20 of them was already the stuff of legend in their circles. This guy wasn't human. He was a demon. But Trevor's fear was quickly overcome by his deep-seated rage and humiliation. He slammed his hand on the armrest of his chair. "Don't get cocky, Ethan. This is my turf. I brought over 100 men today. You think you can fight 100 guys by yourself?" As if on cue, hordes of men poured out from the surrounding warehouses and shadows, completely surrounding us. Every single one of them was armed and looked ready for a war. Scarlett's face went white. She instinctively moved closer to me, her voice trembling. "Ethan, we should call the police." "The police?" Trevor howled with laughter. "Scarlett, you're so naive. You think the cops are going to get involved in this? Let me tell you, even if they show up, they'll just politely invite me for a cup of coffee." He jabbed a thumb at his own chest. "Because my dad is Damian Knight, the chairman of Apex Corp., a man who has this entire city in his pocket. In New Haven, the Knight family is the law." His voice boomed with absolute power and confidence. The thugs puffed out their chests, as if his family's power was their own personal armor. Scarlett's heart sank. She knew he was telling the truth. The Knight family's influence ran deep in New Haven, with connections in every corner of the city, both legal and illegal. Their power was enough to make anyone despair. Today, it seemed they were truly trapped. But just as she felt a wave of hopelessness wash over her, I, standing beside her, let out a soft, contemptuous chuckle. "The Knight family?" I looked at Trevor as if he were a clown. "You think your connections are impressive. Let me tell you something. In my world, your connections are worthless." I took out my phone and dialed a number. The call was answered almost instantly. I didn't say a word. I just turned on the camera and panned it slowly across Trevor and his army of thugs. There was a 3-second silence on the other end of the line. Then, a voice so respectful it was almost reverent came through the speaker. It wasn't loud, but in the tense silence, everyone heard it clearly. Hades, sir. You're in New Haven. This is Wyvern. Which one of these blind fools has angered you, sir? Please remain calm. Give me 3 minutes. If I cannot resolve this to your satisfaction in 3 minutes, I will present you with my own head." "Hades? Wyvern, what was this, a movie?" Trevor and his thugs were dumbfounded. Scarlett stared at me, completely bewildered. I didn't explain. I just hung up the phone and looked at Trevor, a cold smile playing on my lips. 3 minutes. Enjoy the last few moments of your pathetic reign. What kind of trick is this? Trevor snapped, though his voice wavered. You think hiring some actor is going to scare me? Let me tell you, nobody can save you today. Not even God himself. The words were barely out of his mouth when his own phone started ringing violently. He glanced at the caller ID, and his face instantly paled. It was his father, Damian Knight. He fumbled to answer it, his tone immediately shifting to one of respect. "Dad, why are you calling so late?" He was cut off by a roar so loud I could hear it from where I stood. Trevor, you idiotic little bastard. Are you trying to get our entire family killed? Where are you? Are you at that construction site? Did you just piss off a young man named Ethan? Trevor was stunned. Dad, how? How did you know? How do I know? You almost got me killed, you moron. Damian Knight's voice was filled with a terror and fury Trevor had never heard before. Do you have any idea who you've messed with? That is a man the head of the Dragonetti family in New York would kneel to. With a single word, he could wipe our entire family off the map. You useless, worthless waste of space. Why was I cursed with a son like you? I don't care how you do it. Get on your knees. Beg. Pray for his forgiveness. If he is even slightly dissatisfied, don't bother coming home. Just jump off the damn bridge. Click. The line went dead. Trevor stood there, holding his phone, looking like his soul had been ripped from his body. The Dragonetti family. Kneeling, one word, and the Knights would disappear? How is that possible? He looked at me, and my calm, impassive face, and a terror so profound seized him that it felt like his blood had turned to ice. He finally understood what kind of entity he had provoked. And right then, less than 2 minutes after I'd hung up my phone, the squeal of tires and the roar of powerful engines filled the air. A convoy of dozens of black Audi sedans descended on the site like a pack of wolves, surrounding Trevor's thugs. The doors opened in perfect unison, and nearly 300 men in black suits and white gloves poured out. They moved with the disciplined precision of a military unit, each one radiating an aura of cold, lethal competence that was more intimidating than any special forces team. Leading them was a powerfully built man with a hard, chiseled face. The moment he stepped out of his car, he saw me. And then, to the absolute shock of everyone present, this imposing, powerful man dropped to one knee, placed his right fist over his heart, and bowed his head. Wyvern, reporting, Sir, I apologize for my delay. Please forgive me, Lord Hades. Behind him, the 300 men in black suits dropped to one knee in a single, fluid motion. Their voices thundered as one. Please forgive us, Lord Hades. In that instant, the world seemed to stop. Trevor was catatonic. His 100-plus thugs were so terrified that the sound of their weapons clattering to the ground was the only sound in the night. Scarlet was completely frozen, her hand covering her mouth, her beautiful eyes filled with a shock so profound it was almost painful. Hades, Wyvern, what kind of world had she stumbled into? And her husband, in name Ethan Vance, what kind of terrifying power did he command? I didn't look at Wyvern. My eyes remained fixed on the ashen-faced Trevor. Now, I said calmly, do you still think your connections are so impressive? Trevor was shaking like a leaf in a hurricane. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Fear had him in a chokehold. Wyvern followed my gaze and immediately understood. He shot to his feet, his eyes like daggers, and a crushing wave of pressure washed over Trevor. You're the blind fool who dared to offend Lord Hades. Wyvern's voice was like thunder. He began to walk toward Trevor. Trevor scrambled backward, then fell to his knees and began slamming his forehead into the dirt, sobbing. I was wrong. I was wrong. Please spare me. Lord Hades, have mercy. He finally understood what his father had meant by a godlike figure. Compared to the scene before him, his family's power was a pathetic joke. Mercy. Wyvern reached him, kicked him onto his back, and planted a heavy boot on his chest. His eyes were devoid of warmth. For offending Lord Hades, the only price is death. He pulled a gleaming combat knife from his belt. No, don't kill me. Trevor shrieked, the front of his pants darkening. Just as Wyvern was about to strike, I spoke. Wyvern. Wyvern froze, immediately sheathing his knife and turning to me. Sir, your orders. Break one leg and one arm, I said calmly, and tell his father, Damian Knight, to be at the Sterling estate tomorrow morning with 50% of Apex Corp's shares to make a personal apology. Yes, sir, Wyvern replied without hesitation. He turned, and with brutal efficiency, stomped on Trevor's left leg and slashed his right arm. Ah! Trevor's scream echoed through the night before his eyes rolled back in his head, and he passed out from the pain. Wyvern's gaze then fell upon the 100 kneeling thugs. They all began to beg for their lives. Please, sir, have mercy. Trevor made us do it. We'll never do it again, we swear. Wyvern looked to me for guidance. Sir, these men, each one breaks one of their own arms. Then they can leave, I said, my voice flat. I have never shown mercy to my enemies. It was a gruesome bargain, but they took it. The sounds of screams and snapping bones filled the air for a moment, a sickening symphony of retribution. Scarlet watched the brutal scene, her face pale, but she didn't look away. And deep inside, beneath the shock, a new feeling was taking root, a profound sense of safety. As long as this man was by her side, it felt like the sky could fall, and she would be fine. Soon, the area was clear. Wyvern returned to my side, his head bowed. Sir, are there any other orders? Clean this place up, I said, gesturing to the mess and the unconscious Trevor. And investigate Leo Hayes. I want him to pay for what he's done. Understood, sir. Wyvern immediately began directing his men, cleaning the site with practiced, professional efficiency. I took Scarlet, who was still in a daze, back to the car. Let's go home. Inside the car, Scarlet started the engine but didn't drive. She was silent for a long time before she finally asked the question that was consuming her. Who are you? Her voice held a faint tremor. I looked at her. Her beautiful eyes were a swirling vortex of shock, curiosity, confusion, and a little bit of fear. I sighed. I knew I couldn't hide it from her forever. My name is Ethan Vance. I have another name. Hades. I am the founder and commander of this nation's most secret special operations unit, Aegis. Wyvern was one of my lieutenants. Every word was a thunderclap, shaking the very foundations of her world. Aegis. Even as a civilian, she'd heard whispers, rumors of a shadow organization that operated above the law, dealing with threats the public never knew existed, protecting the country from the darkness. Its members were the best of the best, possessing skills beyond mortal comprehension. And Ethan was their commander. It was more unbelievable than a fairy tale. She searched my face, looking for any sign that I was joking. There was none. My eyes were calm and deep, like a star-filled night sky. She knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the bone, that I was telling the truth. Suddenly, everything made sense. The black card, the seemingly magical medical knowledge, the terrifying combat skills. It all clicked into place. She fell silent. The atmosphere in the car shifted. After a long time, she put the car in drive. Let's go home, she said softly. Her voice had lost its icy edge. In its place was something softer, more vulnerable. It was after midnight when we returned to the villa. Robert and Eleanor were both awake, pacing in the living room. They sagged with relief when they saw us walk in unharmed. Scarlet, are you all right? Did that little bastard Trevor give you any trouble? Eleanor asked, her concern a shocking departure from her usual demeanor. Scarlet shook her head. It's fine, Mom. The situation is resolved. Resolved? How? Robert pressed. Scarlet glanced at me, unsure of how to explain. How could she tell them that the son-in-law they looked down on was a being so powerful they weren't even worthy of standing in a shadow? I spoke for her. I taught Trevor a lesson. Tomorrow, Damian Knight will be here to personally apologize. What? Eleanor shrieked. You taught Trevor a lesson? Ethan, are you insane? Do you have any idea who the Knights are in this city? You've just brought ruin upon this entire family. Robert's face went grim, his eyes fixed on me. Seeing their panic, a strange feeling bloomed in Scarlet's chest. Once, she had been just like them, thinking Ethan was nothing but trouble. But now she understood. It wasn't Ethan who was bringing trouble to the Sterling family. It was the Sterling family that was not worthy of the trouble he could solve. They were the ones holding him back. She took a deep breath and looked at her parents, her voice clear and steady. Dad, Mom, you don't need to worry. From this day forward, as long as he is here, no one in New Haven City will ever dare to harm our family again. The next morning, a convoy of luxury cars, led by a Rolls-Royce Phantom with a license plate and H1, pulled up to the Sterling estate. The door opened, and Damian Knight, a formidable, powerful man in his late 50s, stepped out. Behind him, a dozen of his top executives followed, each holding an expensive gift box, their expressions a mixture of reverence and fear. The butler ran into the dining room, stammering, Yes, sir. Madam, it's Damian Knight. He's here. Robert and Eleanor, in the middle of breakfast, dropped their silverware with a clatter. What? What does he want? Eleanor's face was sheet white. He's here for revenge. Robert, what do we do? We have to run. Robert's face was grim, but he forced himself to remain calm. Panic solves nothing. We'll face whatever comes. Despite his words, his trembling hands betrayed his fear. Only 2 people in the room were unperturbed. Me. I continued to eat my oatmeal as if nothing was happening. And Scarlett. She glanced at me, and a sense of calm settled over her. Soon, Damian Knight and his entourage entered the villa. His eyes swept the room, and when they landed on me, sitting calmly at the breakfast table, he froze. A deep, primal fear flashed across his face. He took a deep breath, ignored Robert, who had stood to greet him, and walked directly to me. Then, to the utter shock of everyone in the room, he bowed deeply from the waist, a full 90 degrees. Mr. Vance, my son was a fool and offended you. I, Damian Knight, have brought him here to beg for your forgiveness. As he spoke, 2 bodyguards dragged in a wheelchair. In it sat Trevor, wrapped in bandages, his face as pale as a ghost. He looked at me with the terrified, hopeless eyes of a lamb being led to slaughter. Kneel, Damian Knight commanded. The bodyguards hauled Trevor out of the wheelchair and forced him to his knees in front of me. Apologize to Mr. Vance. Now. Trevor trembled, banging his head on the floor over and over again. Mr. Vance, I was wrong. I'm scum. I was blind. Please, have mercy, spare my pathetic life. He sobbed, a wretched, broken creature. Robert and Eleanor were dumbfounded. Their minds simply couldn't process what they were seeing. The Damian Knight, the undisputed king of New Haven City, was here, forcing his son to kneel and beg for forgiveness. Had the world gone mad? Eleanor pinched herself hard. The sharp pain confirmed she wasn't dreaming. She looked at the young man who was calmly finishing his oatmeal, the man she had called a loser and a freeloader. And for the first time, she felt true terror. Damian Knight ignored their shock. He took a file from one of his executives and presented it to me with both hands. Mr. Vance, this is a 50% share transfer agreement for Apex Corp. I've already signed it. From this day forward, you are the majority shareholder. We've also brought a few humble gifts as a token of our sincerity. He waved his hand, and his executives opened the gift boxes. A limited edition Patek Philippe watch, a diamond necklace the size of a bird's egg, an original masterpiece of classical art, the keys to a penthouse on Fifth Avenue. Each item was priceless. Eleanor's eyes were wide, her breathing ragged. Any one of those gifts was worth more than her family's entire yearly profit, and they were all being offered to the loser she despised. I put down my spoon and wiped my mouth with a napkin. I didn't even look at the gifts. I took the share agreement, glanced at it, and then casually handed it to Scarlett. Here, from now on, any business between Sterling and Apex is your call. Scarlett numbly took the document, which was worth billions of dollars, feeling like she was in a dream. I stood up and faced Damian Knight. I'll accept your apology. You can take your son and leave. Damian Knight looked as if he'd been granted a presidential pardon. Thank you, Mr. Vance. Thank you. However, my voice turned to ice. I expect this to be the last time. If I ever hear about your son throwing his weight around again. I left the threat hanging in the air. My cold stare said the rest. Damian Knight shuddered. Mr. Vance, you have my word. I'll break his other leg and lock him in the house for the rest of his life. With that, he and his entourage scurried away like beaten dogs. The huge living room fell into a dead silence once more. Robert and Eleanor stood frozen like statues. After a long moment, Eleanor shuffled over to me, forcing a smile that was more painful than a grimace. And my dear son-in-law, did I just see what I think I saw? Damian Knight, I ignored her. I just turned to Robert. Dad, let's finish breakfast before it gets cold. The word Dad made Robert jolt. He looked at me, his eyes a storm of emotions, shock, awe, and an overwhelming sense of relief. He was relieved that, on that chaotic wedding day, he had made the right choice. He knew that from this day forward, the Sterling family's destiny had changed. And the one who had changed it all was the man standing before him. The son-in-law he had once thought was just an ordinary, broke veteran. The day after the Knight's visit, An earthquake shook New Haven's high society. Apex Corp announced the unconditional transfer of 50% of its shares to Mr. Ethan Vance, the son-in-law of the Sterling family. Damian Knight stepped down as chairman, and his son, Trevor, vanished from the public eye completely. The news was a bombshell. Everyone was scrambling for answers. Why would the city's most powerful family suddenly bend the knee to a nobody? Who was this Ethan Vance? The Sterling family, overnight, became the most powerful and mysterious family in the city. Suitors and businessmen lined up outside the estate, desperate for an audience with the enigmatic Mr. Vance, but all were turned away. I paid no mind to the storm I had created. I still left the house every morning on my scooter to go deliver food. It was just a cover, of course. My days were spent at a secure location, managing the affairs of Aegis. Scarlett, meanwhile, became the busiest person I knew. With my backing, the Sterling and Apex corporations began a massive series of joint ventures. Resources and opportunities flooded her company. Scarlett rose to the occasion, revealing a brilliant mind for business, masterfully managing both empires. She became more confident, more radiant, a true queen of the corporate world. And the way she looked at me changed. The ice was gone, replaced by curiosity, admiration, and a deep affection she herself hadn't fully realized yet. She started waiting up for me to come home from my shift, a warm dinner always on the table. She would text me during the day, reminding me to be careful. She would get adorably pouty if I spent too much time talking to another woman, even if it was a female Aegis operative giving me a mission briefing. The Ice Queen was melting. Eleanor's attitude toward me did a complete 180. She fawned over me, calling me her dearest son-in-law, serving me food, even offering to draw me a bath, an offer I politely but firmly declined. This world is a funny place. When you're weak, you're surrounded by wolves. When you're strong, everyone wants to be your friend. As for Leo, Wyvern was efficient. He found out what had really happened. After running from the wedding, Leo never got his VP position. Trevor had used him like a toy, and when he got bored, he had his thugs break Leo's legs and dump him in an alley. Wyvern's men found him there. He was quietly admitted to a long-term psychiatric care facility. There, he would spend the rest of his life paying for his betrayal. When I told Scarlett, she was silent for a long time. Then she said, softly, he got what he deserved. And with that, Leo's name was never spoken between us again. Time flew by. Soon, our one-year contract was coming to an end. One evening, Scarlett came to me, holding the original agreement we had signed. It expires tomorrow, she said, looking at the floor. I looked at the now yellowed paper and smiled. Yeah, time flies. So, are we going to the courthouse tomorrow? She asked, a nervous tremor in her voice. I didn't answer her question. Instead, I asked one of my own, do you want to? She looked up, her beautiful eyes shimmering with unshed tears. She bit her lip, wrestling with her own emotions. Finally, she took a deep breath, snatched the contract from my hands, and, in one decisive motion, ripped it to shreds. Ethan, I don't want a divorce. She looked me straight in the eye, her gaze blazing with a fierce, unwavering passion. I don't care if you're Hades or the commander of Aegis. All I know is that you are my husband, Ethan Vance. It used to be just on paper, but now I want it to be real. A lovely blush spread across her cheeks. I looked at her, and my heart felt full. I stepped forward and gently pulled her into my arms. You silly girl, I whispered into her hair. From the moment I stood up on that stage, you were already my wife. Scarlett's body went rigid for a second. Then she melted against me, wrapping her arms tightly around my back. She buried her face in my chest, and I could feel her happy tears soaking through my shirt. Outside, the sun was shining. Our story was just beginning.